Final Fantasy XIV. I really wanted to get addicted to, love, or even just like this game, but there's something or someone nefarious that keeps me from being able to. They claim it's the DDoS hackers, or my own internet connection, or the unbearable weight of massive success. Basically anything but their own servers and netcode. Now, I'm not going to pretend I know the real reason, but as a gamer, I really don't care, because what I do know is I can't play the game that I paid for, and that's not cool, man. This is just the tip of the iceberg for why I'm giving up on returning to this game. I already had a strong feeling that I didn't want to play it anymore, and I was just working on this video when I decided, you know what, maybe I'm being too harsh. Let's give it one more shot. Then I was disconnected twice in a row, just trying to beat this 30-minute single-player quest in an instanced zone at the end of Heavensward. To clarify, there were no other players in the area or involved in my activity. For all intents and purposes, I was playing a single-player game when I lost connection to the server and got disconnected from the game. Coincidentally, my Yogi T-tab said, "Listen to the whispers of the universe." I guess the universe was whispering, "This game sucks." Before we get into all my complaints about the game, I do want you to know I really tried to like this game. I'm arguably part of the target audience as well. I love Final Fantasy games, with 7, 9, and 10 being my favorite RPGs of all time. I played World of Warcraft from 2006 to 2011, pretty much obsessively, but I wanted to play a newer MMORPG with a focus on PvE and less of a try-hard community. So I didn't just fall out of a coconut tree and end up in Eorzea. I spent $300 on the ticket to get there. This included the base game, all the DLCs, up to Endwalker, originally on PlayStation and then again on PC because of course progression doesn't transfer, along with the subscription fees for roughly a year on each platform. So I was completely invested in this pitch I keep hearing that it gets good. But yeah, I mean, 150 or so hours later when I finished Heavensward, I realized this game kinda sucks. My core complaint about the game is the main story quest, also known as the MSQ. It is simultaneously somehow the boring part and the best part once it gets good. Go online to any chat forum and you will hear people talking about how the first 50 hours of it, A Realm Reborn, is a slog. Here's the problem. When the beginning of the game makes players dread logging in, that's not good. There are times when the intensity of the story picks up, usually towards the end of the expansion in both, Heavensward and A Realm Reborn. But then after saving the world from sure destruction by fighting either a dragon or a deity or a evil mastermind, you'll be tasked with something like really stupid and menial that completely breaks the immersion and makes you realize, oh, this part of the game only exists to pad my game time and extend my subscription fees.
You cannot trick me! You cannot trick me!
What's most frustrating is that all the other progression in the game is locked behind the MSQ, so you can't do higher level dungeons, you can't do class missions, you can't level jobs, you can't really do anything until the main story quest line is advanced, and that feels extremely restrictive. I think of games like World of Warcraft or all the Elder Scrolls games where a big part of the fun was the ability to choose to go out and pursue your own style of the game, whether that be joining the Dark Brotherhood or the Mages Guild in Skyrim, or doing Battlegrounds and the dungeons in World of Warcraft. Those games had a main quest that would benefit you to do, but you were never required to do it in a way that gatekept you from the rest of the game in the way that Final Fantasy XIV does. This is why I quit doing any of the jobs, like fishing or cooking, even though I enjoyed them, because I kept hitting a point where I couldn't level it anymore, specifically because of my MSQ progression. At some point, my time was torn between leveling something fun and drudging through the MSQ, chores and cutscenes, so I finally just decided to disengage from them and walk back and forth between points A, B, and C endlessly to unlock a barrage of 3-minute cutscenes in hopes that something interesting actually happens.
They know what they're doing. They know when they're causing harm. They know when they're taking you for granted. They know when they're not being respectful. They know when they're being abusive. They know when they're manipulating and exploiting.
Sadly, it used to be even worse, to the point where the developers eventually revamped the whole beginning of the game and made A Realm Reborn 2.0. And I played both, and while it was a little easier to handle, both were still drowning in menial chores placed between a ton of uninteresting cutscenes. For more evidence that the developers know that this part of the game is bad, look no further than the Final Fantasy store, where you can pay to skip the story, which is required to progress. Granted, it's only $25, $60, but just a reminder, you also have to pay for the expansion in order to then pay to skip it, on top of the subscription fee. To be clear, in effect, this is saying you don't like the game you purchased? Well, if you just give me more money, then you don't have to play it. And I get it, most will defend this, saying that it is meant primarily for people that are making a second character or a character on another server, which, okay, fair enough, I guess. But my point still stands that the fact that they offer to skip it at all, to me, signals that they know it's a bloated snore fest that barely constitutes a game and leans more into excessively slow-paced visual novel genre. The biggest irony is that the latest expansion, Dawntrail, has been called the worst expansion pretty much universally. So if you were to pay to skip to the end of the game, you'd be skipping right to the worst part. Besides the beginning, right? Because the beginning is also considered one of the worst parts. And the middle, because after you beat Heavensward, the next expansion is considered one of the weakest ones as well. So basically, the parts of the game that suck, it's only the end and the beginning and the middle. But man, it is so good otherwise if you just don't count the beginning, middle, or end of the game. I looked it up and you can now get the game with all of its expansions for $60, skip it all for $25, and have a max level character of any class for $25. But at that point, why not just save $110 and never play it at all?
No, I know math is hard. When you're an idiot. But if you're a broke boy, just say so.
The game was built with accessibility in mind. While this helps ensure everyone can beat the game without any effort, it does this at the cost of making it incredibly boring to play. It isn't that the game needs to be a brutal Souls-like experience or have artificial difficulty that depends on whether or not you grinded 100 hours to get the best gear, but it is brain dead easy 90% of the time, and the other 10% of that is locked behind the MSQ. When doing dungeons, the only way to come close to failing is if someone disconnects, and even then, someone will fill in within a few minutes if you just wait. So this may be my most subjective critique of the game, but pressing a simple 1-2-3 combo over and over again for the entire game, no matter like which form of the game you're engaging with, it just reminds the player that you have zero agency in this game and your sole purpose is to watch cutscenes. Personally, I found the most rewarding games to play were challenging. Beating boss fights in Sekiro, Remnant, and Elden Ring were extremely rewarding experiences for me. Winning a match in Apex Legends, PUBG, or Warzone with the boys was always like a celebration event. And finishing a Final Fantasy game in the 90s was an experience. Like you felt like you really saved the world. You finally beat the villain. In this game, you just get a GG, thanks for the group, and a new set of gear. Part of it is my preference towards games with some skill or strategic requirement tied to the success, but isn't that typically what games are? When I was working on this script, I started to feel like maybe I was being too harsh on the game, because after all, a lot of people did love it. I started to wonder, had I become a jaded gamer? Do I have ADHD? The game description checks almost all of the boxes that I was looking for in a game to play. Where was the disconnect? So I logged back in, went to the next quest in the MSQ to dig my heels in one more time. Then I got disconnected within 30 minutes. Never mind, fuck this game. I'm out. I'm just gonna go check out a YouTube video where they show the rest of the story through Endwalker, because this is not a game. It's a story that's held back by its own delivery method, which is artificially padded to keep you on a subscription plan. But nothing can really entice me to return to Eorzea, and at this point, I'm okay with that.